My name's Lucy Hope and I'm the author of Fledgling, a children's novel soon to be published by Nosy. Fledgling tells the story of 12-year-old Cassie Engel, who lives in a strange house perched high on a rock overlooking the Bavarian forest in Bavaria. She lives with her opera singer mother, strange taxidermist father, and gravely ill grandma. One day, during a thunderstorm in the winter of 1900, a cherub is blown into Cassie's bedroom, triggering a series of terrifying events. Soon, grim forces are gathering, and Cassie has to summon the courage to fight for everything she has ever known and loved. I'm still shaking when I find Raphael in the library. He's bathed in the light of the old desk lamp, absorbed in an enormous book, the cherub nestled, still asleep in his arms. As I creep in behind him, the old floorboards shift noisily under my boots. It's impossible to walk quietly anywhere in this house. He turns to face me and smiles. How did it go? She wants me to dispose of the owls, I say. I don't mention what she said about him. Your grandmother would never allow it. Your mother knows that. The creak of Grandma's pump weaves its way from the floor above. I know she can no longer help me. She wants Papa out of the music room. Apparently he's taking up too much space. I almost laugh at the thought, as Papa doesn't take up much space at all. Big-hearted, but damaged, like his friend, my Uncle Killian, who died years ago, he shuffles about the house most days, humming into his giant pipe-stained beard or squirreled away in his workshop. Grandpa once explained that his soul was shattered after what happened in the war. He told me there was no contraption that could repair that. She'll probably change her mind, says Raphael. Why don't you wait and see what happens? It might just be one of her whims. I nod and pull up a chair next to him. Has she been like this all the time I've been away? I ask, looking down at the cherub, wishing more than anything to take her back. Yes, she hasn't moved. I'm wondering if she might be traumatised, and this deep sleep is some sort of protective mechanism. As if he's read my mind, he gently passes her back to me. I hold her tightly and feel a comforting warmth spread through my body again. Within seconds, our hearts are beating in the same rhythm, like earlier. I didn't think I'd imagined it. The book Raphael has open on the desk looks ancient. It's a codex, he whispers, an illuminated manuscript handwritten on vellum. I think it's very old. I touch the hand-cut edges of the book, being careful not to get my fingers near the illustrations. Noticing my nails are black, I pull my hands away and tuck them round the sleeping cherub instead. The drawings are the brightest gold despite their age, and the elaborate borders are laced with interlinked miniature cherubs. I'm worried for a moment it might be written in Latin, and am relieved to see it's in the old Bavarian language. Where did you find it? I say. I'm certain I've never seen it before. Whenever I went to visit Grandpa in the library as a child, he'd pull out old books for us to look through together. He'd explain how vellum was made from calf skin and that it lasted for hundreds or even thousands of years. I loved listening to his stories of how early craftsmen stretched and scraped the material and whitened it with chalk until it was ready to be written on by scribes with goose feather quills. Sometimes we even made our own quills when one of the owls dropped a feather or we found an eagle feather in the forest. We mixed up solutions of oak apples, lampblack and black iron salts for ink and wrote stories together. I remember laughing when he told me how people use stale urine or earwax to improve the texture of the gold paint for the illuminated texts. It was with the religious books, says Raphael, nodding towards one of the bookshelves. It looks like it hasn't been opened for a long time. There's no title on the spine or anywhere on the cover, which is why it wasn't obvious. I lean in closer still and my arm brushes against his. He's generating as much heat as the cherub. He turns to me and smiles briefly before returning to the text. The book is thick, probably 100 or more pages, and huge, taking up most of the desk. The leather cover is a faded red. It's coated in dust, and as I run my fingers over the pages, tiny particles jump about us. I wonder briefly if it is the dust of my ancestors, skin fragments from another age. We sit side by side and read together. I listen to the sounds of the house, worrying Mother might pounce on us unexpectedly, but I've never seen her in the library, and with the door closed, I feel safe. I can read Old Bavarian, but I'm slow to make sense of the elaborate lettering. As I pick my way through the heavy script, reading out loud, I catch my breath. Cherubs are the highest in the hierarchy of angels, sent to Earth for only the most crucial missions. I gasp. Do you think she's here on a mission? What could she possibly be here for? Raphael shakes his head, but says nothing. Any person who causes harm to a cherub will face the fury of the host. Fury of the host? What does that mean? I glance at Raphael, but his face is inscrutable. Further down the page, we find detailed physical descriptions of cherubs, and even a little sketch with annotations. According to what is written here, cherubs vary significantly in appearance, and often nothing like those in the traditional religious drawings seen in churches and Bibles. The cherubs drawn and described here are baby-like, but their bodies are feathered and 4 small wings protrude from their shoulder blades. Some are so pale they are almost transparent, yet others have dark skin and black feathers. The cherub in my arms has skin the colour of alabaster and feathers in shades of beige and umber. Raphael and I look at each other, and then down at the cherub. A cherub on earth draws sustenance from the chosen host, for love is the food that nurtures them. What do you think that means, I say? Does it mean the host of angels? How can they draw sustenance from them if they're elsewhere? Raphael shakes his head. Perhaps it's a different type of host they're talking about. In the margin, overlapping the illustrations, is a mess of faded scribbled notes, a later addition to the more formal writing elsewhere on the page. The word predator appears several times. Towards the top of the page, the same word has been underlined many times in the firm, scratchy sweep of someone's quill. Whoever wrote this did so in a hurry. There are mistakes and crossings out, and the ink has smudged as if the author slammed the book shut before the ink had been given time to dry. There is a sketch of a giant bird-like creature in the top right corner of the page. In another sketch in the wide bottom margin is what looks like a thundercloud. It's anvil-shaped and strangely menacing looking. Within this cloud is a silhouette of a black creature travelling at what looks like great speed towards the forest. Underneath the image is a word scratched so deeply it has almost created a hole in the page. The word is Sturmfalken, Stormhawk. Have you heard of the Sturmfalken? I whisper, looking up at Raphael. His head is hanging low, making it difficult to see his eyes. His hands are gripping the side of the desk. I think you have, I say quietly. What do you know about this? I don't know, Cassie, but there is something familiar about them. He examines the page. But I can't think where I've seen them before. I've heard old folk tell tales of giant bird-like creatures swooping over the forest, but I'm sure it's just superstition. The cherub starts to stir in my arms. She lets out a piercing shriek, and instinctively I put my hand over her mouth to hush her. Shh, I whisper, my heart suddenly pounding. We're trying to protect you. She looks up at me through eyes that are not human, a colour I have never seen before. In her eyes are all the jewels of the world. Aquamarine and sapphire and emerald, somehow combined to create one unearthly hue. They're strangely beautiful and round like an owl's, as if framed with kohl. There's something about them that both unsettles and reassures me at the same time. In her eyes, I see great strength, wisdom, and perhaps a little fear too. She begins to tremble in my arms and my fear disappears. I touch her head to reassure her. "Can you speak?" I ask, even though I know the answer. She doesn't say anything, but instead makes a soft cawing sound. "Please don't worry," I say. "I won't hurt you." She crawls closer to me, as if to become a part of me. She looks around the room, taking everything in. When her eyes fall back on me, I smile at her, trying not to look worried. "I'll look after you," I say. I want to learn more about the Sturmfalken and question Raphael further, but now with the cherub awake, it doesn't feel right somehow. I shift her position on my knee. "I think we should put the book away for now," I say. "We don't want anyone else finding this, least of all Papa. You'd only worry." Raphael slides the book back into its place on the shelf before returning to his chair. We sit for some time, transfixed with the cherub, but like frightened parents, not really knowing what to do next. Raphael cranes his neck to see what the storm is doing. "I'm going to have to go," he says. "I promised Father I wouldn't be long. Will you be all right until tomorrow?" "Please don't go," I say, feeling a rising panic at the thought of being left alone with the cherub. "I have to. I'm sorry. If I don't, he'll come looking for me. And you know what happened last time." How could I forget? Of course Raphael needs to go. I cringe as I remember how Mother treated his father the last time he came to the house. "But please be careful if you have to go out," he says, "and keep her close by." He puts a hand on the cherub's head and she makes a gentle mewing sound. "And don't leave her where Bram can get at her," he adds, smiling. He gets up and rolls his shoulders as if they are troubling him. As he reaches the door, he stops and turns to me. I'm certain he wants to say something else, but he leaves without another word. I tiptoe to my room, the cherub still in my arms, and look out of the window. As Raphael walks back to his cottage, a shaft of winter sunlight settles on his retreating back, illuminating him slightly. He turns to wave before disappearing through his front door. The clouds, still swirling about our rock, are heavy and dark, but the storm has passed. The cherub stirs. I sit on my rocking chair and settle her on my knee to take a better look at her. The feathers that cover her round, baby-like body are beginning to fluff up as they dry, making her look larger than earlier. Her feet and hands are bare, like those of a baby. The soft hair on her head, like her skin, feels as ancient and fragile as the earth. She turns her inquisitive face to me, and for a while we sit and study each other. She seems as interested in me as I am in her. She stretches her wings out and I run my fingers along them, carefully untangling any storm-damaged tips. They are as soft as velvet and are gleaming now like the inside of a shell. They look too small for her to fly. But then how did she reach my room? I think of the eagle owl in the owlery and his vast wingspan and the owls that circle our rock at night. Her wings are different to theirs, but she is so light, perhaps she was simply lifted by the wind. I softly blow on her to dry her feathers. She flutters her wings as if testing them. She does not try to fly, but I wonder if and when she will.